Go ahead and continue reading. My name is Tim Jarris. I'm Dean of the Monfort College of Business. At the Monfort College of Business, we focus on adding value to our undergraduate business students. While the quality of our recruits entering the university, what we like to think of as our farm system, is important. It's more important for us is that we believe it's more important to add value to those students, and that's why we're in business and why we're successful. We became the first and only business school to receive the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award, in part due to our willingness to pursue a strategy that was different from our peers. We became an undergraduate program at a time and throughout a period when many of our peers were actually doing the opposite, where they were adding many graduate programs, particularly MBA programs. We were swimming upstream. Our strategy for building a quality program, somewhat like the strategy I think the Rockies have followed in recent years, was different from most, but ultimately quite successful. The Monfort College of Business, we like to refer to our program delivery strategy as high-touch, wide-tech, professional depth. I'd like to tell you today just about one component of that strategy and give you a few examples. Professional depth is a dimension of our program delivery strategy we believe leads to deeper learning and longer learning retention. Employers tell us it helps our students do a better job of hitting the ground running as they start their careers. Could you imagine the entire Rockies training camp taking place in the classroom with no experiential learning, no bats, no balls? We think the same. Professional depth occurs in the Monfort College of Business in a myriad of ways. We bring speakers like Keli McGregor today and Bob McGow a few weeks ago to campus forums such as this, and also frequently to our small interactive classes. We involve business leaders like Keli, like Sandy Rufinog, owner of Three Peaks Capital Management, like Mike Shonka, CFO of Cessna Aircraft, and several others, including Dick Monfort, in our Dean's Leadership Council to help advise us on the future directions of the college and help make sure that our students are as prepared as they possibly can be. We bring senior executives and international scholars to the classrooms to teach entire courses, thus complementing our already outstanding business faculty. Recent highlights include Lee Corns, seated back here, former CEO of the Securities Traders Association and the Philadelphia Stock Exchange, and the Pacific Stock Exchange. Lee taught investments. This fall, Alec Novak, the Dean of the University of Warsaw Faculty of Management and Economic Advisor to the Prime Minister of Poland, spent 3.5 weeks with our students teaching them about the economic analysis of the European Union. In Sunday's Greeley Tribune, many of you read about how our students are working on real-world technology problems, helping out local and regional nonprofit businesses. They're making a difference in our community and our region, and getting great experience at the same time. Finally, one of our alums, Leadership Council member, Kevin Ahern, is currently teaching a course some of you may have heard about, where our students actually manage in excess of $1 million. Kevin does that for a living, but he's also spent his semester bringing in a lineup of money management specialists for our students from such organizations as Innovest Portfolio Solutions, Denver Investment Advisors, CoBiz Financial, Three Peaks Asset Management, and several others. Needless to say, I could talk a long time about the College of Business. I'm pretty passionate about it, but I don't think people can see me. So I'll get out of the way now and introduce our cleanup hitter. We are so pleased to continue to bring to you the Business Plus series. Today's speaker is the tradition of important business leaders discussing the important topics. Today we are honored to welcome Keli McGregor, President of the National League champion Colorado Rockies. We can probably take a break. The Arizona game when it was raining, and it hasn't shrunk too much. Now in his 6th year as the president of the Rockies, Mr. McGregor has served the organization for 14 years, joining the team in October of 1993 as Senior Director of Operations. He became Senior Vice President in 1996 and was named Executive Vice President in 1998 before taking the helm as President in 2001. In his various capacities, Mr. McGregor has been responsible for overall day-to-day operation of the team's business since 1995. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm welcome to Keli.
Thank you. I move around and I'm tall, and so I'm going to dive in and out of this, but hopefully I can speak loud enough that I won't be interrupted, and hopefully what I have to say is worth not being interrupted. I am thrilled to be here. Dick got me involved with I'm the advisory council for the College of Business here about 5 years ago, and I'm a Colorado State graduate, and I thought it would be good because Dick asked me, number one. But I also, I'm a believer of higher education, and I thought it would be good to see, having 4 young kids, what Northern Colorado had to offer and what the higher education environment here was. And like so many, I was absolutely blown away by the asset that this university has with their College of Business, and it's been a pleasure to be involved. I'm one of their biggest advocates. I talk about it all the time. It's really a hidden treasure that many of you are aware of, but most people in the state aren't aware of, and certainly they've been recognized appropriately with the Baldrige Award, but I have also been greatly rewarded by being involved in it. So I certainly am thrilled to be here on behalf of the College of Business, and also on behalf of the Colorado Rockies. I don't take myself too seriously. Dick and Charlie, if you know them, don't take themselves too seriously, but we do take elements of what we do very seriously, and what we take most seriously is the people that we represent. And I will say to the students here today in this presentation, what I take most seriously is the opportunity I have to be in front of you, and our organization has to be in front of you, and explain a little bit about who we are and what we do every day and how we go about business. The way we go about business, I was thinking as I was sitting here, I didn't know Kenny. I got a chance to meet Kenny a few times along the way, but I did not know him. But as we were sitting here beforehand, although baseball is a very goofy business at times, and it's rather strange and challenges some of your core values at times in very simple ways. If Kenny was involved in baseball, I think he'd be proud of what kind of organization we have, and that what we're really speaking about today is the organization of the Colorado Rockies, not so much the celebration of the National League Championship, because inside our organization, we believed we were champions years ago. Inside our organization, we believed we were doing the right thing years ago. We knew there would be a day that we would be recognized by the external world as a champion, but we believed long before we got here that we were doing things the right way, and that ultimately the performance and the execution of everything that we were about would lead to something like this. And obviously, we're thrilled with the year that we enjoyed. I'm going to move through this rather quickly. Again, as I get a chance to talk directly to students, I think there's an engine behind the Colorado Rockies, and it's the only way leadership works. And the engine behind the Colorado Rockies is pretty simple. It's the people. And for whatever business you're in, whether you're in sport, whether you play sport and now execute in the business world, all organizations are a little bit different. They have different levels of talent and skills and gifts available to them, different challenges within their specific area of business. But it comes down to the people that you have and how you prepare your people. And ultimately, and I think this applies directly, I think the coaches here will appreciate this, I think it's very important in terms of how you prepare your organization to think and how you prepare your people to think. I think the thought in which, just like attitude, and we'll talk about attitude here in a minute, I think the thought you wake up with every day has a lot to do with what you accomplish each and every day. I think the thought you bring to your organization has a lot to do with who your organization is each and every day. I happen to subscribe to this. Some of you won't. But I think left to their own, if you put a group of people, and as talented as this group of people is, if you gave us a task and there was no leadership, I think eventually we would become dysfunctional. How long that would take, ultimately where we would lead is kind of unknown. But I happen to believe a group of people without leadership will eventually become dysfunctional. And it's one of the simplest ways to describe the value of leadership. For the students in this room, this is really what it's all about. If we stopped right here, you would know what the Colorado Rockies were about. Hopefully in depth I can explain a little bit more about why we believe this, why we counted on this, and maybe tie some of the things that we experienced this year to the very essence of the engine of the Colorado Rockies, which is the people that run the organization, the people that support the organization inside the walls every day. I think the focus of any discussion around the Colorado Rockies is this. There's numbers on uniforms, there's names on uniforms, but what we focus on is the person inside that uniform. And that's oftentimes lost in the world of sport. We focus on the numbers on their contract, the numbers on their jersey, and we lose sight of the people inside the jersey, and that's ultimately what drives our business. There's 4 core questions that I have kind of developed over the years that I think might help the students in here understand the relationship between organizational growth and leadership, and ultimately the level of success that you're trying to move and help move your people towards. There's many questions that one could ask, but these are some that I have had a chance to develop. Do your people believe you are willing to sacrifice your own self-interest for the good of the group? Those coaches here know how important this is. I believe as a leader you kind of lose the right to think for yourself. You have to think for everybody. You have to think about everybody. Also, one thing that coaches know, especially in sport, it comes down to preparation. And your athletes and your coaches, they start with how you prepare. Where their preparation starts with how prepared you are. And I think you earn their respect by how prepared you are each and every day. I think you ultimately show them that your own self-interest is moved out of the way because you prepared harder than anyone, and your expectation of them can then follow naturally. I think we all struggle at times with personal agendas that get in the way. When you're willing to sacrifice your own, you'll find there'll be less and less personal agendas that will show up within your organization. And I think the final comment I think we can all relate to, champions like leaders, they're not made in the ring. They're only recognized in the ring. There's never been a world boxing champion that was made in the ring. They were made in their preparation. They were made in their determination to become a champion. I think the second question that I like to propose is, do your people believe that you hear their ideas about going to the top and value them? You don't have to agree with all of them, but are you willing to listen? Just like real estate, listening, I think is the beginning of a good leadership communication with your staff. Communication is critical to create value in the thoughts that people share with you. We have a chief customer officer that we named about 4 years in our organization with one simple goal in mind. We wanted the customer to be at the center of our organization in the way that we think. So we have a chief customer officer that represents the internal and external customer in the way that we think. Because again, listening to the customer it sounds good, it's always not that natural. So we took a step to have a customer advocate in the middle of our leadership decisions. Our job is to create balance. In sport, one of the things we know inside a clubhouse, inside a locker room, is you cannot allow your environment to ever be contaminated by negativity, by gossip, by self-pity. And so again, I think it starts with, are you willing to listen to them? Are you willing to create an environment in which their ideas matter? Their effort matters. If so, I think then you can challenge when you see something get in your environment that might be negative or start to take you down. Third question is, do your people believe you are committed to helping them grow and develop on the way to the top? Everybody wants to get to the next level. All of us in sport want to perform at a certain level. We want our performance to be recognized. We don't know how many National League championships we're going to win in the next 5 or 6 years. We don't know how many World Series we're going to participate in the next 5 or 6 years. But what we do know is that our people, each and every day and each and every year, can grow and develop inside the Colorado Rockies, no matter what our performance is. And I think the part of leadership that I probably take most seriously is recognizing the next level for each one of our employees, and recognizing, I call it leadership math. Ultimately, leaders making leaders is ultimately what creates explosive growth for our organization. And I can tell you a quick story. There's many stories of the Colorado Rockies this year, what you saw on the field. There's no one story greater in our mind than Troy Tulowitzki not taking anything away from anyone else, and it's because of his leadership. As a young player, we have never seen that kind of impactful leadership come from a young player. Quite frankly, we haven't seen that kind of impactful leadership come from any player in the history of our organization. It made an enormous difference on our franchise because it changed the environment inside our clubhouse. And I'm not taking anything away from anyone else. He's a gifted leader. It's how he's built. And as a rookie, it didn't matter if he was a rookie, a second-year player, a 10-year veteran, that's how he's built. He has to go with what his stomach tells him to do, and his stomach tells him to lead, and lead every day. And he has a tremendous influence on other players. And so as we talk about talent, and we get in discussions of the value of talent versus other components of an organization, I can tell you that his talent wasn't nearly as impactful, as great as it was, and we all believe he should have been the Rookie of the Year because of his well-rounded abilities on the baseball field. That was secondary to his leadership ability and what it did. That's the other great thing about this job. We get ovations for our players, and they do things. Final question is: do your people feel a strong sense of team and community and organizations that you lead? And look at this. Look at the term Rocktober that came out of this year. I think there's no greater example of the sense of community that grew out of baseball this year. I share this story, and I'm going to move through it very quickly here, but I played for the Broncos and had a chance to get to know John Elway. And when he retired, I had a conversation with him one night several years ago. And at the end of the conversation, he said to me, "I need a job." And what he was saying is he needed a team. He needed a sense of community to reattach himself to. As a quarterback of a football team, he was always at the center of the team and the community. And what he was saying in that comment is, I need a community. I need a team in which I can be plugged into. That was that valuable to him. We obviously know all the other things he enjoys in life, but he was at that moment lacking team and community. I think it's very, very important as we look at organization. Your people, all of us sitting here today, we want to be a part of an organization where there's a sense of team and community, where someone's relying on us, and ultimately we're relying on someone else. Again, quickly to the students, this is what, in the opportunities I get a chance to speak, this is probably the most confusing thing, most simple confusion about leadership and management. Simply put, we manage issues, we lead people. And back to the original comment about leadership and people, I think that's so oftentimes confused. In our business, there's so many business elements that come into play. And we confuse that's leadership. That's ultimately the good leader, the one that negotiated the great contract, or the one that was more strategic. I can tell you that's very misleading. It's all important, and we all are evaluated on parts of those components of our job. This is the one ultimately that makes. And if you believe in people, and you believe people are the engine of your organization, leadership is very, very different. You don't manage people. You lead people. You set an example for people. You show people that you care. There's a term that we've heard in various parts of our life, putting a little heat in the kitchen. You can put heat in the kitchen by caring about someone more than they ever thought you would ever care about them. That's how you lead people. You can move somebody in ways they don't want to be moved just by caring about them. Sometimes you have to move people another way. But if you want to move people, you don't manage people. You lead them. And then you got to be willing to do everything and be everything that you're asking them to be. I think leadership's the key to sustainable success. I'd like to quickly read this. It's unknown. Leaders need to understand the difference between a tempting shortcut and the most efficient way to accomplish something. There is a vast difference. Most things of quality are built slowly over time and come at a significant price. I think the significant price part of this is the part that people struggle with. There's a vast, some think that building an organization or business is best accomplished by grandstand plays or a form of a shortcut. They look at big flashy promotions, huge and inflated publicity. These do make a splash. We've all seen them. They have impacts. It's not like they're useless. They are useful at times. But those enterprises built on hard work, one quality step at a time, are the ones that endure. I think most of you would agree with that. I think the components of this are why most people don't do it. Significant price sometimes is where the separation begins. for those that are willing to stay the course and others that choose another way of getting there. I think leadership attitude, talked about this at the beginning. Again, I know the coaches will agree with this. And I give Dick and Charlie a great deal of credit for this. We had a business 5 or 6 years ago that was virtually bankrupt, and we had a lot of areas of our organization that needed to be addressed. And we ultimately, and one of probably the most offensive things, and coaches, you've probably dealt with this at times, one of the most offensive things working on the business side of sport, especially having been an athlete, for any of us to hear, anybody who's competitive, is when they look at your business and say, you don't want to win. You don't care about winning. That's a hard thing for all of us to swallow, and there's 25 newspapers right now around the country writing about management and owners in our sport about they don't want to win, based on principles in which they're trying to run their business. I think for us, and again, Dick and Charlie have made a big impact on our organization this way. When we set out to straighten out our business, our desire was to be a winner, but our desire was to be a sustainable winner, and that was going to be supported by the way we did our business and also the way we developed our club. And I think it all started with an attitude, and Dick and Charlie brought this attitude to the Rockies. They helped us make a choice that optimism would be our companion every day. And our people in our organization, we gave them little slivers of optimism. We built very small layers along the way. Most people couldn't see them. But we built optimism on every thin layer we built. Each and every year, each and every day, we marked the progress. And we were optimistic when it was a small layer. We built on it was a small layer. Most of those thin layers were so thin no one else could see them, and so we drew criticism from them. But each one of those layers meant something to the people in the organization because we had an attitude of optimism. You guys all heard Charlie's attitude of optimism. But it's very, very real in what we did, and we chose to be optimistic about our future, and we're very optimistic today about our future. There's an old saying, the difference between winning and losing can be a slight adjustment in your attitude. You take the 21 of 22 games that we won this year, a loser's approach to whether that's possible or not before it happened would be it's possible, but it's difficult. A winner's approach, again, back to optimism and attitude, the winner's approach is it's difficult, but it's possible. Our guys had to win. They knew they had a margin of error that was almost zero. They won 13 out of 14 games with knowing they had to win almost. And as the other teams were winning, they knew each and every day they had to win. But I think the difference, and you talk about these small layers, I think we made a choice to be optimistic. I think they went to the ballpark every day with a sense of optimism, and I ultimately think that's how we won 21 out of 22. I think they were optimistic every single day. There's in sport, we get on streaks, we get on rolls, and everybody, they want to move to, well, when's the roll going to be over? Oh, they can't stay this hot. I think our guys, that's the one value of taking it one day at a time. I think they were optimistic every day they could do it that day, and that's how we won 21 out of 22. Insecure managers, this is why I think leadership is so valuable, because it moves you towards simplicity, and we all know in all that we do that you can get very complex. If you can move your organization towards simplicity, it's of great value to your organization. It's of great value for sustainable success. So it's the more you grow, the more simple you become. Leadership simplicity, just the highlighted portion. People must have self-confidence to be clear, precise, to be sure that every person in their organization, high to lowest, understands the business is trying to, the business is trying to achieve. At the end there, clear, tough-minded people are the most simple. I think as you grow and you move an organization and you develop more leaders within your organizations, the more valuable the organization becomes. And one of the reasons it becomes more valuable is because you can simplify your very focus, and that allows you to be more sustainable over time. You'll have less distractions you'll pay attention to. You'll cut out the noise and the clutter, and it's real simple to stay on task and stay on course. Baseball's a journey. I think leadership's a journey. Some might argue that. Baseball is truly a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I think that we've seen, Clint Hurdle is being appropriately recognized in Denver right now for his role. Dick and Charlie and myself have believed in Clint. We believed in Dan. We believed in all the people they supported for years. We knew what we were up against. We knew what kind of criticism he was taking for the role that he had in all of this. But he's being appropriately recognized, and I'll tell you one of the reasons Clint is so valuable is he manages it like it's a journey, because he trusts the very owners that run it like it was a journey. And again, as baseball, over 6 months you go through so much. We were 9 games under 500 in May. We looked like we were fading out of it in early September. We ran into those injuries in late August, or excuse me, late July, early August. But I think part of the reason the Colorado Rockies rose through most of that is because we've always looked at this in a much longer perspective. I think any future we have will be tied. Any future we have as an organization will be tied to the long body of work, not to any sprint part of this. And if I'd asked, if we had this meeting in late May, I told you we were going to be the National League champions, you'd have had, I don't know where the closest psychiatric ward is, but you would have quickly rushed me over there. But our belief, and our belief today is still strongly that our future is still about the journey. It's not about any one given day or any one given week. It's about where we're trying to get to and how we're trying to get there. The value of mission, there's a lot of appropriate discussion in terms of guidance around mission and vision with inside organizations. For us, our mission is to be able to stay on course in this journey each and every day. From a vision standpoint, we created a vision image a few years ago, and it looks like we're not going to be able to get there. Here it is. We hung this up in our organization. It's really kind of fun to talk about this slide. This is the first chance I've had to talk about this slide in a different way than I normally talked about it. Normally, what we talk about this slide is this is ultimately our goal. The reason we had the champagne on ice is because we were ready. We believed we were a champion, just ready to open the champagne. So it was already on ice. No one needed to go buy it. No one needed to dream about it. It's on ice. We're gonna open this one day. It was about staying the course. It was about the journey. It was one thing at a time, one day at a time. We think baseball is a much, much better game. We think leadership plays out much more strategic and much more impactful when you do it one day at a time. Our players represented that this year. They represented it it wasn't a 22 game streak. It was 22 different days, different part of the journey. It was 22 attempts to be the best. And the fun part about talking about this year, I always used to say that we're going to have a big dry cleaning bill, because every one of our leaders in our organization had a bottle of champagne in their office the last 5 or 6 years. And we were going to open this champagne together because it was an organizational effort. And what's fun about this is, I wish I had some pictures. We allowed our entire organization to come down into the tunnel, and we poured 600 bottles of champagne on each other. We didn't pay for the dry cleaning. I always told them we were going to pay for the dry cleaning. We didn't get into that. We ruined a lot of clothes that night. But we poured 600 bottles of champagne. We marked that moment. We marked that moment in the journey. We marked that moment in everything we were about. And back to people being the engine, and I've heard this from many, many people inside our organization, it was their greatest moment in baseball. And I'm saying this on behalf of people that have been in World Championship Series, that have won World Championships with other organizations. It was their greatest moment in baseball because they've never, ever experienced champagne. And what did the champagne represent? There was a bottle for everyone, and at that moment it said, thank you for your contribution. We relied on you. We wouldn't have got here without you. And they all got to celebrate together. And our players were out there pouring champagne on them. And we celebrated as an organization. And ultimately, I believe that champagne was a significant mark for them that they mattered to our organization, and we couldn't have done it without them. I'm going to move quickly here. We have retreats every year, and this is something that I'm going to go through these real quick. Again, to the students in this room, let me go back. Students in this room, can I go back?
Yeah, one more.
when you talk about vision, we talk about that moment of pouring champagne, which we just experienced, and it was awesome. It was a one day at a time approach. It was believing in what we're doing approach. But these are some vision killers that can get in the way, and I just want you to think through them real quick. Tradition is an awesome part of our game. The rich history of baseball is what makes baseball what it is. Most of you could care less about Barry Bonds, but Barry Bonds is talked about because he's messing with the history of this game. And he matters to most of us because he's messing with the history of the game. History in baseball, it is very special to what we all shepherd along, and we're growing our own history. The 2007 Rockies, I said this to my kids the night after we made it to the World Series. I said, you know what, you'll be telling your great kids about the 2007 Rockies, because that's what the history of baseball says is going to happen. And it's an awesome part of our game. But at the same time, tradition can get in the way. The way we run our organization is our choice, and it's ultimately comes from the leadership that we have and the values we believe in. But most people don't run their organization that way, and that's fine. If we ran our organization the traditional way, I wouldn't be standing here talking. I'd have been fired a long time ago. Dick and Charlie might have sold the club a long time ago. But what we believe in every day is the people that we support, and that is not traditional to the game of baseball. So I just want to say to the students, inside your vision, these are just some of them, and you could list many others. These are some of the things that can kill a vision today, and they're subtle, and sometimes you don't know it until after it happened. Tradition, ridicule or criticism, I think that's pretty obvious. I think you know in sport, and all you coaches know, what comes with the territory of working in sport, especially public sport. Short-term thinking, talked about that earlier. I think you've always got to have you've got to have a decision-making process that grounds you in where you want to go and the long-term benefits. Short-term issues have to be dealt with. Short-term opportunities have to be taken advantage of. But I think short-term thinking, more often than not, is a vision killer. Fatigue leaders, something that's very real in our business, and coaches know this. You represent other coaches that just work their tail end off. You have people in your businesses that work so very, very hard. I think fatigue leaders who care so much will go to the well for you every day. You got to protect your leaders. Fatigue leaders can kill a vision. They can work so hard. They can work out in front of themselves and out in front of their capabilities, and then they don't listen to their employees. They don't support their employees. They don't care about their employees because they're worn out, and they can kill a vision. Naysayers goes with ridicule and criticism. And complacency, I think, in sport, coaches go to this. My dad was a coach. When you win, one thing they guard against is complacency. And it's something certainly we'll guard against. But I think complacency can subtly enter an organization, so you constantly have to push each other. It's part of the leadership response. The more leaders you get in your organization, the more you'll push the process along, and the less you'll ever have to worry about complacency being a vision killer. Building a bridge of trust. This is the element that I didn't know Kenny, but bridge of trust is why Dan O'Dowd and Clint Hurdle took so much criticism on behalf of so many in the organization. We had a bridge of trust with these guys. Dick and Charlie had a bridge of trust with these guys, that they would handle all the criticism that they were going to get, because they believed not only in what they were doing, but they believed in how they were doing it and the people they were representing. And when you build from within, you're representing every scout, every player development, every hitting coach, every roving instructor. And the bridge of trust was that we aren't going to change our course. We're not going to blow you up because we're not popular. You're not popular right now. We're going to keep doing what we believe in. And the relationship of trust in our organization is why Clint Hurdle and Dan O'Dowd now are getting the appropriate recognition that they deserve. And I know Dick and Charlie are uncomfortable with this, but Dan O'Dowd's been a good baseball executive for a long time. We knew Clint Hurdle could be an excellent manager for a long time. You know what they needed? They needed somebody to support them and somebody that they could trust. And then they could move that trust down to their player development people. They could move that trust down to their coaches. We had a summit a few years ago, and I told Dick and Charlie the most important part of this summit is all these scouts and all these player development folks from around the world are going to come and they're going to assess whether they can trust you or not. If they walk out of here with more trust in you, our organization will explode. Bridge of trust and the integrity of that trust is why the Colorado Rockies have enjoyed the kind of year that we've enjoyed. The value of character, again, I think about coaches, and I talk to the young people. Good character is a collection of positive qualities committed to habit and cultivated over time. Say that one more time. Good character is a collection of positive qualities. Could have got them from your parents, could have developed them yourself, but they're committed to habit and they're cultivated over time. And others begin to rely on them, and the most powerful thing that we as leaders can build on is character. No man can climb beyond the limits of its own character. I truly believe that. I think as leaders, one thing that the people you lead they'll find every flaw you got. It's part of their expertise, and you'll never climb beyond that as a leader. They'll follow you till the point in which they see your flaw, and they're not going to go a step further. Accountability, another element in sport. If you're not performing at the level you want, what's one of the first things you hear people say? Someone needs to be held accountable. And most people's expectation is someone needs to be fired. One of the leadership challenges we've been talking about, and if I was here a year ago and you thought somebody should have been fired, my response would have been, we don't need to fire them to hold them accountable. We're going to take everything we've invested in them and we're going to move them in the direction that we want. They trust where we're at. When they trust what they're at, they can hear any level of criticism. Again, back to putting heat in the kitchen. We'll put whatever heat we think is necessary in the kitchen to make us better. You don't have to fire somebody. What about all that time you invested in them? What about all that trust that you grew? It all goes out the door when that guy goes out the door. I give Dick and Charlie a lot of credit for that process, and I'll wrap it up here. The period of time between the birth of a dream and its realization is always a process. Patience is a big part of a process. Don't put your own time frame on a process. This period is filled with doubts, adversity, changes, and surprises. During the process, you will experience good days and bad days, and frequently you will be faced with the dilemma, do you give up or go on? This is all a process is. I'm let you read it yourself. That's all a process is. Team results. It's nice to see National League champion up there. It's going to be nice to see World Series champion up there. Hope you invite me back next year so we can talk about that.
You promise? Write it down.
But we're now working on National League championship rings, and we're going to eventually get those designed, and ultimately Dick and Charlie will be handling those out next year in the opening series. To me, team success and what we talked about here today, the ring is a symbol of the journey. And the most important part of the journey is the relationships you now have because of it. So that ring, when it goes on, and I talked to several of my peers this morning that have handed these rings out in the last couple of years, and they said the ring process, I'm going to say it this way we'd say it at Colorado State, it's a pain in the ass. It is a pain in the butt. You know what they said? When you hand that ring out, it is so worth it. And when we hand that ring out, our ring is going to represent a successful journey. But what they'll remember for years and years is the relationships they had because of the journey, and that's why that ring will be special. Whatever course you decide upon, and this is for the students in the room, there's always someone to tell you you're wrong. There are always difficulties arising which tempt you to believe that your critics are right. To map out a course of action and follow it in the end requires courage. And if I were to end any other way, as the journey continues for the Colorado Rockies, good leadership. Many of you are gifted. I imagine there's leadership gifts throughout this entire room. You cannot sustain your leadership gifts. You can't grow your leadership gifts if you're not willing to do it with courage. It is absolutely a requirement to leadership development. You got to have courage. I thank you for allowing me to be here. As I said earlier, I didn't know Dick and Charlie were going to be here. I was going to rewrite this thing because they were here. But as I said earlier, and I don't, because we've invested in all this together, I can say this with great conviction and also something you can always remember. Leadership starts at the top, and it comes in a lot of forms and fashion. but the trust that I believe their father must have passed along to somebody to grow the business they had in this town is the very essence of which the Colorado Rockies came out of the ashes this year and became the National League champions. Thank you.
We have some time for some questions if anybody would like to ask.
600 bottles of champagne.
Yeah. $4 a piece.
He hasn't seen the bill yet.
Yeah. Yes.
This is really not related to the wins here, but
Yeah.
I think the customer service thing you mentioned early on is incredible. There's no experience in sports like going to Coors Field.
Thank you.
It is just tremendous.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone praise a player as what you mentioned, Shulo. I think that shows a lot about the organization and a lot about you. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I make a quick comment there? I get an opportunity to talk to our players. We have a winter development program. We bring our top 25 minor league players into Denver. Now we're on 2-year cycles because many of them are repeating it, but we did it every year for several years. And they come in for a month, and we try to get them out in the community. They get to experience a lot of what Denver and Colorado has to offer. We bring in, they go through their baseball work and baseball development. We have all of our top pitching coaches and hitting coaches and fielding coaches in town. They get a chance to walk through the tunnel just like they're going to walk through the tunnel when they get out of their car the first time they've been called up to the major leagues. You never know when that's going to be. They stay with host families and they get a chance to live with the host family. We invite the host family, whether it's at home and on the road. When that player makes his major league debut, the host family's there along with their family. And Troy Tulowitzki was in that program last year. And I get a chance, like many of us, to have a day to talk to him at lunch. Right after lunch, we bring in various business and community leaders to let them know a little bit about the community that they're going to work and play in. And the opportunity that I had last year was to talk to them about the leadership instinct and just talking about when it sits in your stomach as a leader, you've got to learn how to say it. Yeah, it might be offensive. You'll learn better how to say it the next time, but you got to say something. You've got to let that leadership instinct work. And how important that is for all that we were going to provide them. One thing we can't provide them is leadership inside their clubhouse. Somebody was going to have to own that themselves. And Troy Tulowitzki was sitting there taking notes, and he was taking notes and taking notes. And it struck me when he was taking notes, but it didn't have any impact on me until I saw what kind of leader he was this year. I'm not suggesting that my talk with him changed Troy Tulowitzki. All I'm saying is, as a leader, he was taking notes, and I didn't recognize that at the time. Now I know why he took notes, because he's a natural-born leader that could not pass up this opportunity. And I'll tell you, he changed the Colorado Rockies environment. We have a bar. You know why I believe in the Colorado Rockies? We got a bar here, and he's protecting it. It's going nowhere but up. He will not let that thing drop. Dick can't do that. Charlie can't do that. I can't do that. Clint can't do that. Dan can't do that. We got a young player now that's not going to let that standard drop. Thanks for your comment. Okay. You asked to describe maybe a few specifics of leadership. Very easy. He's all about winning. He wakes up in the morning and he is all about doing everything he has to do so when he takes the field, every guy on that team can count on what not only his preparation, but what he's about ready to do. It's contagious. He opens his mouth a little bit. It's pretty impressive. But he doesn't have to open it very much. We were in Boston this year, the first time in, and we had won a couple games in Baltimore, and we were about 500, I think, at the time. We were working our way back. We were actually starting to play good baseball. We were starting to get some pitching. And I'm going to say this like I know it. I hope I don't offend anybody here who's from Boston, but we landed in Boston, and one thing that struck me was about 20 minutes into sitting in my hotel room and flipping through the channels, they thought they invented baseball back there. And we were some minor league team from Colorado come back to participate at Fenway Park for a few days, and it irritated me. And so I was down in the weight room the next morning, and I had this going through my mind all night, and Troy Tulowitzki and Matt Holliday were in there riding a bike like they do every day, and so I went right over them, and I go, these frickin' guys think they invented baseball here. Troy says, I know it. And you know, we played great that night. We ended up winning the next 2 nights, and I think that's a reflection of, you know, I just needed to say it to somebody. He already knew it. He was living it. He wasn't coming here to look at the green monster. He was going to look at the green monster. He came there to beat the Boston Red Sox, and they did, and that's what drives him, and it's contagious. He is what Troy Tulowitzki brings to the ballpark affects the other 24 guys every day. Okay, yeah.
Something that I learned through this process was we've been here for 5 years in northern Colorado, and I've read nothing but negative things through the press about ownership, about management, about you name it. It was negative. It's come somewhere around the All-Star break, and it would really turn. And I really appreciate, my learning process was I really appreciate the Colorado Rockies for not coming out against the Denver media and saying, yeah, I told you so. You guys just kind of stepped back and said everybody's got their opinions. I think that's something that you can learn through a business plan. And I really appreciate that, and that's something I can share with my players, with the organization.
You know, that one slide there at the end, there's always someone in sport. I mean, you take the greatest of greatest. Dick's a big Packer fan, and you know, it became popular the last couple of years to rip Brett Favre. He's too old, shouldn't have been. You know what? If he'd have listened to that, he wouldn't have been back. Most people criticize him for coming back. Would they be anywhere near where they are if it wasn't for him? He that was noise to him. And I guarantee you this: there's several players on that team who are going to play with that passion their whole career because of him. Yeah.
Speaking of that, is there anything that you learned in football that you have been surprised to apply in baseball?
Both in a positive way, or well, my first reaction to that is I was I'm going to give you a quick answer. I was surprised how much fear existed inside the environment of baseball. You know, the best players struggle in baseball, and they know the next struggle might be around the corner, and we have a very powerful union in our game, and the agents have but you don't have to be a good agent in baseball. You just got to have a good player. You don't need to be a good agent. And there's a lot of fear that is interrupted our environment, and I never saw that in football. You know, the harder you try in football, usually that means something good. Baseball, the harder you try, sometimes it gets worse. And when you have inherent fear and you're trying hard, it really can be infectious in a negative way in an environment. And that's the one thing I saw in baseball that was confusing me, because in football, people aren't afraid. They don't last long if they're afraid. And in baseball, there's a lot of inherent fear. The best players can be afraid of going 0 for 27 or all of a sudden maybe a pitcher loses command or whatever it might be. But Troy Tulowitzki doesn't have a lot of fear. So I feel pretty good about our environment that way. In a positive way, I think strength and conditioning, I'm a big believer in strength and conditioning. When we first got in baseball, we had a ping pong table in our weight room. That's what we did. That's what we had. I think Tiger Woods, the quote-unquote skilled athlete, and you might know this in basketball, I think Tiger Woods helped change the mindset of the quote-unquote skilled athlete, the way he physically prepares himself, and how that ties to his mental performance as well. And I think some of the fear in the game has been overcompensated for by mental and physical preparation. They are physically. We have 15 guys working out. We had 11 guys this morning. We have 15 guys in town working out right now. And the physical preparation, I think, helps them mentally. I think all the qualities we've developed, I think the physical preparation helps move all those along.